Hey everyone, and welcome. Today, we're going to unpack a really powerful idea, post-colonial theory. Now that might sound academic, but trust me, it's basically a special lens that helps us see the hidden histories and power dynamics that are still shaping, well, everything around us. So let's dive right in.
To really get why this theory is so important, we're not going to start with the dry, boring definition. Nope. Instead, let's start with a puzzle, something from our everyday lives, a feeling you've probably had, but maybe couldn't quite put your finger on.
You know what I'm talking about, right? That corporate diversity day or the company-wide celebration of different cultures that somehow feels more like a PR move than anything real. It just feels superficial, kind of empty. So why is that?
And that, right there, gets to the absolute heart of it. Postcolonial theory basically argues that this hollowness we feel is there because we're not seeing the whole story. We're missing these deep, often invisible histories of power and colonization that are still calling the shots in our world today. Okay, so keeping that puzzle in mind, let's actually define what we're talking about here. What does it really mean to look at the world through this post-colonial lens? Now, the key part of this definition is at the very end. This isn't just about making a list of historical facts, who colonized whom and for how long. It's about theorizing the problems. It's asking why things were set up that way in the first place. And, most importantly, how we can start to undo those long-lasting effects. Think about it like this. A regular history book might tell you all the facts about the British Empire in India. But a post-colonial analysis asks different questions. It asks, how did that relationship create our ideas of East versus West? How did it fundamentally change what counts as knowledge? And how are those old ideas still playing out in global politics today? See, it's an active investigation. This quote from Henry Schwartz just nails it. The goal isn't just to know more stuff, it's to actually transform how we know what we know. It's about challenging the very foundations of Western thought and arguing that a lot of it was built on the back of colonial power. So you might be wondering, how is this different from other big critiques, like postmodernism? Well, post-colonial theory brings a really unique historical and, crucially, a global perspective to the table. So, for instance, a huge idea in postmodernism was this concept of the death of the subject. It's the argument that our whole idea of a single, stable individual's self isn't some universal truth, but was actually just an invention of a particular time and place. And boom, right there is where post-colonial theory steps in with a razor-sharp question. It asks, okay, but which subject are we talking about here? Was it the so-called universal human subject? Or was it actually the subject of Imperial Europe, the one that had spent centuries defining itself as the center of the entire world? Just asking that one question completely changes the game. And that's really what makes it unique. Post-colonial scholarship gives us that global context. It refuses to look at big issues like race or class in a vacuum. Instead, it connects them directly to the long history of empires and the global economy, a view that goes way beyond the borders of any one country. Now, a way of thinking this big and this critical didn't just pop up out of nowhere. It was literally forged in the fire of massive, world-changing events. This whole theory really grew out of the huge shifts that happened after World War II. You had decolonization movements, literally redrawing the map of the world. Then, as waves of people migrated from former colonies into places like the UK and the US, a new generation of thinkers and writers started to connect the dots. By the 1980s, this way of thinking finally got a name and a home in universities. All right, so let's bring this all the way back to our starting point. How does this lens help us rethink something like multiculturalism in our own lives? So from a post-colonial perspective, that hollow feeling we talked about comes from something you could call cosmetic multiculturalism. This is when complex, living cultures get flattened out, sanitized, and basically turned into a product, something colorful to look at or consume, all while the real structures of economic and political power are left completely unchallenged. You can really see the difference here. On one side, you have the cosmetic view, where culture is just a commodity and the main goal is to just manage difference, keep things smooth. But on the other side, the post-colonial critique sees culture as a place of struggle. It says history is absolutely central, and the goal isn't to manage power, but to fundamentally challenge. And at the end of the day, this isn't just some abstract thing for academics to debate. This theory helps us understand the messy, deeply personal, and often contradictory realities of living in a world that is still very much shaped by the legacies of empire.
This one line from a short story just captures the complexity perfectly. You have a son, born and raised in England, telling his Pakistani immigrant father that he's become too Western. It's this incredible reversal that just shows how tangled up history, identity, and a sense of belonging can get. It proves that the past isn't really past at all. It's alive, it's inside us, and it shows up in the most unexpected ways. And that kind of leaves us with this final big question. For the millions and millions of people whose lives are shaped by these histories of migration and colonialism, what does a simple word like home even mean? It's these kinds of deep, unsettling questions that show exactly why post-colonial theory is still such a vital tool for understanding not just our world, but ourselves.